Welcome to the Real eCommerce podcast, your go-to for straight talk and smart tips from the world of online retail.
Time we're talking about feeding success e-commerce food and drink subscription strategies. We could go by our aliases in Slack for this one, Marcus. So I'm D'Artagnan apparently, and yours Easy Top, according to on Friday's poll. So
well.
if we need to refer to each other, we can only use those names. All right.
Perfect.
I don't know if it's the same for you. We're talking about food subscriptions. I'm just thinking about habits at home, but we have the same 7 dishes on repeat in our household, and occasionally you get the odd dish like for dinner or whatever that sneaks into the short list or the menu, whatever you want to call it, and it might stay around for a couple of weeks, it might sort of fizzle out, or it might become one of the staples, but something else will drop off. And we only really ever, when we go round shopping, going, are we going to have which one of these 7 this week, and start picking off the shopping list. I don't know if you're the same at home, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I use meal kits as well. So not only am I getting the same ones, but I'm getting the same ones delivered on subscription.
Oh, really? Well, we're all creatures of habit, I suppose. And I guess that's why subscriptions are a game changer for food and drink retailers, is because we're all creatures of habit. We like ordering the same thing. We like the convenience of it. We definitely like the reduced friction. That's probably why you have the meal planning done, because you're not having to go around the supermarket.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of subscriptions in a nutshell, isn't it? It's if you can make things easier for customers, reduce friction, particularly for those habitual purchases, those things that you're going to continue to purchase, or you want to continue to purchase in a very similar way on a regular basis. It's a game changer for brands to be able to offer that.
Mike in the office got me into ordering this bone broth, which is Borough bone broth. I order it every 4 weeks. It freezes, so it just keeps. But no subscriptions, no option to subscribe. It's all they sell. You would have thought the people that buy it probably buy it pretty regularly. John, our BDM, if you're listening, Borough broth. But you would have thought there was some sort of mechanism there to be able to just get that on repeat. It arrives in a chilled box. You know, it can go in the freezer. I'm ordering very cyclically, but nothing there. So I think when we look at people or businesses like that just aren't doing it, that feels odd.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's something there. You know, you said it's chilled, so it could be that they don't have the right logistics in place for delivery date selection. You know, any products that are perishable, that is a challenge. So it could be that they just don't have the infrastructure in place, but it's easier than ever now. You know, with loads of tools out there that are available for everyone. So yeah, it's a strange one. I think single SKU businesses with, you know, small catalogs, particularly in food and drink, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
I've gone the other way with another retailer. We used to order dog food on a subscription box, but we kind of stopped having the food. But we really love their treats. You can't buy their treats, so they've done the opposite. They've made it so it's only a subscription. You can't subscribe just to the treats. You have to have the food. And so yesterday I was reduced to ringing them up and placing an order over the phone for dog treats on their own, which is a bit odd, isn't it? So you can't go full ham the other way and start alienating people that want to buy the odd thing from you and just go subscription only. I think that would probably be a bit weird, especially for this bone broth one. But yeah, picking out the stuff that works well as bundles, subscriptions, and then, like you say, having those plans for logistics and things like that in the back end to make sure it's all deliverable. One other thing that subscriptions is good for is kind of, you know, it gives you that predictability on your ordering from your suppliers. So, you know, whenever you look at multiples of revenues of businesses or things like that, then having subscription predictable income is great. And the logistics behind the scenes for you guys, when you're retailers and you're ordering from your suppliers, it's going to make that 10 times easier as well, because it's a regular order for a fixed amount with a bit of overrun, perhaps.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's easy to look at the benefits to the customer. You know, like we've just said, there's plenty of benefits there, particularly in food and drink. The benefit for the brands is that predictability, obviously recurring revenue, and getting repeat business. But yeah, being able to project and know both where the revenue is coming from each month, but also where your stock's going. If you've got a big subscription base, that you can plan stock and inventory levels much easier.
So one of the things that we've got on our list to talk about today was loyalty within subscriptions, and I wanted to maybe sort of customer retention and loyalty go hand in hand. And one of the ones I touched on the last podcast was Pepsi's movie night, and I thought that was brilliant because what they've done is they've taken something you probably do regularly once a week with your family, and turned it into a subscription where you can order the drinks and the snacks to go with your movie night. Therefore, every week you just have your movie night box delivered and you sit down and enjoy a movie with the drinks and the snacks. I mean, I thought that was kind of like a stroke of genius. And it's amazing how you can actually start to build those narratives for other brands around, maybe it's a peak in demand or whether it's a story that you build into to align with your products. But I thought it was a very clever way of building in that customer retention and getting them to come back. It's not just, the bone broth I'm just going to order, right? It's just because I want to eat it and make it part of some of the things I cook with. But if you're trying to sort of introduce products that don't organically fit the subscription model, tying it to a narrative is quite clever, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at, we mentioned our meal prep. One of the things, that I find really good about one of the meal prep companies I use is that they have thematic things that go on throughout the season. So at the moment, there's loads of spring-based recipes, but they'll do theme-based stuff around perhaps it's street food, or perhaps it's comfort food, or perhaps it's one-pot wonders, or whatever it might be. And those are the things that make me break my usual habits and my usual kind of set things that I like to order, because it's thematic. It does make you go, okay, it is spring, it's getting a bit warmer. I'm more interested in kind of lighter meals or whatever it might be, or seasonal stuff.
Yep.
But I think there's other examples of that, isn't there? If you look at like Craft Gin Club, it's an incredible offering in terms of, fundamentally what you're subscribing to there is gin. And they're sending you a bottle of gin every month or whatever the subscription period is. But what they've done really well is package that up with complimentary drinks and snacks and kind of information and recipes and all that other stuff that makes it an event.
Yep.
So you're not just getting a bottle of gin in the post, every month or whatever. You're getting an experience, and it's like you said, you're not just getting, a can of soft drink. You're getting a movie night delivered, and I think that's the thing, is trying to frame it as an event, as an experience that you're getting delivered, rather than just a thing, a consumable.
Well, there's two things there. There's the theming it, like you said, but there's also the subscription perks, like a recipe card, or some things to go in the gin that might flavour the gin, or things like that. Just as like an added extra. I think that's kind of like the nice part, that you get to kind of you've got that predictable, repeatable ordering, but it's really important that you kind of still make it different and interesting and fun for the person receiving it. So putting in those other things to build loyalty, keep the customers coming back, it's just kind of like an added perk.
Yeah, I think it's easy, isn't it, to look at subscriptions as, well, the value for my customers as my brand is they're getting a discount. That's normally, a financial discount on the product you're purchasing. Yeah, and convenience. You kind of look at that and go, okay, but that's the package. It's done. Anything you can do to offer additional value there and create more loyalty, that's the stuff that's really going to get you longevity, I think. So yeah, if you like with something new and exciting for either a kind of one-off every now and then, or as part of the subscription, it's a surprise. I think, yeah, more the better, really. And
the next point we've got is about kind of making that feel like it's more of a custom fit than just kind of like an off-the-shelf subscription. So Beth, who's worked with us for a long time, she's moving over client side and going to work with a retailer who does meal kits, meal boxes, like you've got. And this particular one, you can tailor it. It's not like the one size fits all. I mean, I know you can tailor them to taste and preference and things like that. But this particular one, you can do around diet, activity levels, kind of your habits, whether you want to put on muscle or lose weight and things like that. So where you can tailor the fit of the subscription to the user and make it feel more personal, it's going back to the previous point. It's going to help with retention. It's going to help with loyalty. And it also means people have kind of like, like a graphic equalizer they can tweak and play around with to change it over time. So it's not just that same subscription. Like, I guess with the Pepsi movie night, you might want butter popcorn one week, salt popcorn the next. You might want sweets one time. Do you know what I mean? You can throw in different things, so it's not just the same things arriving. And I guess that's probably one of the things with subscriptions. You always think, well, do I want it on subscription, or am I just going to end up with a cupboard full of these that I never actually end up using? So being able to vary things within the subscription, I think, is useful.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for the emotional connection that a consumer makes with a subscription when it's personalized. I think if you go back to even things like music subscriptions, once you've got curated playlists that have been automatically put together for you, it's harder to cancel. You enjoy those playlists. So even though you're perhaps not thinking you want to continue, you don't want to lose those curated playlists that have been put together for you. Same with, I remember Tails, the pet food company, they do a really nice bit of personalization. You put in all your kind of details of your pet at the beginning, and they kind of frame the food. And I don't want to be too cynical. Maybe they are all completely tailored, but I imagine they're tailored to a degree. But the fact that subscription turns up every month with my dog's name on it, and it's it's Ralph's food, it makes it really difficult for me to cancel that, because I'm like, I can't cancel Ralph's food. What's going on? So there is an emotional connection. You've put some effort into that. You've designed that food subscription for your dog. You've got a connection to it, and that makes it more difficult. It makes you more tied into it. So I think there's a few bits of value there. The fact that you can tailor it and make it exactly what you want is one, but the fact that you've put that effort in almost emotionally ties you to it a bit.
Yeah, so again, there's two there, isn't there? There's like the custom fit of actually the products you're getting delivered, and there's the personalization of it to make it feel like it's just been made for you, curated for you.
Make it feel that it's special. Yeah, or your dog, yeah.
One of the hard parts with any kind of food and drink delivery is that fresh delivery and keeping customers happy. One of the reasons that I sort of moved away from the dog food was the packaging used to come with like a wool wrapper wrapped in plastic, and when I used to unpack it, I used to think, what do I do with this? It's not the recycle bin, and it's probably like the landfill. I can't take the wool out and put that in some sort of clothing recycling, and it just felt like there was a lot of that every week that I didn't really know what to do with. Yes, it came in a cardboard box and had like the kind of quick zip freezer kind of pouches that you get now that are just like a plastic bag frozen, or water frozen in plastic bag. All of that's good, but then they wrapped it all in this, I would say, unsustainable wool plastic wrapped insulation, and that I didn't really know what to do with. So keeping it fresh is a big problem. Just be mindful of perhaps like the sustainability part, because if it is on subscription, you're getting this every week, so you've got to do something with that every week, and that for me felt maybe it wasn't the right choice. And it led to a couple of different things putting me off ordering from that for the long term. The other bigger part to that is the logistical side, and I know you've helped a number of retailers with the logistics of getting that right. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I think you're right on the sustainability front. I think it's more of a consideration now for all of us when we're buying things, particularly when we're buying things regularly. So I think, all brands have to work a bit harder now there. That's definitely, there's a logic thing there. What they're trying to do is keep the product fresh, make sure that, perishables are looked after as long as they possibly can. If they're delivered and they're outside your door for a bit, they want to make sure that you get the best possible experience. But there's a balance to be had, isn't there, between, overdoing it and having too much packaging or not sustainable packaging. So
yeah,
completely agree. I think the other thing is, like you said, though, is that logistic planning. If you've got a good fulfillment setup going on. You've got things like delivery date pickers that allow you to plan when you pick, pack, and dispatch products more efficiently. Perhaps that has an impact, and there's less need. We've certainly found that with some of our clients. I think we've shouted them out on the podcast before, but Flair only is an incredible app for Shopify clients that allows delivery date pickers, but there's all sorts of stuff there around order management when it releases orders for pick, pack, and dispatch to make sure you're shipping things efficiently, which obviously helps with that refrigeration process when products need to be chilled. So yeah, I think look really carefully at that logistic pattern, how you're doing that part of it, because that can have an impact on the packaging.
And before you even get to kind of dispatching, there's kind of curating different shipping rates. So I know we've worked with ShipperHQ for sort of 15 years or so. Their ability to be able to set different rates for fresh, frozen, and pantry items, and then when you get a mixed cart, it be able to determine, like, it kind of upgrades it to. So if you've got like a pantry item and a frozen item, it automatically defers to the frozen rates because it knows the frozen item needs to be there within a certain time. So when you think about your products, you don't have to kind of go, oh, that needs to go separately, separate couriers, different rates on the front end for different products. We can't have mixed carts. Like, all of those things can be catered for. And then it can also be catered for from a national, European and international perspective as well, because you may have, frozen stuff. We were working with a retailer that used to do frozen stuff globally. So they would be able to get something frozen to the other side of the world, but that would all come down to the different shipping configuration that they use. So ShipperHQ was instrumental in that.
I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? Looking at that side of it, rather than focusing purely on how do I keep this fresher for longer based on packaging.
Yeah.
Like, look at actually what have you got in place to kind of facilitate that stuff earlier in the journey.
Sure. And getting the product into one of those groups is a fairly straightforward thing. It's just done with kind of shipping groups. So anybody can go through your product catalog and decide which group they fall into. I guess what we're saying is, if you've got a problem like that in the food and drink industry, you're not going to be alone. You're not going to be the first person to have met this challenge, whether it's international frozen food, whether it's having logistical problems, being able to pick based on a customer specific delivery date. There are suites of apps and suites of retailers that use different apps to solve these problems already. So don't let that inhibit you from doing subscriptions, doing delivery internationally and things like that, because, all of that can come together quite nicely.
Yeah, definitely. And we've mentioned, Flair for delivery date picker in Shopify, but ultimately there's apps out there that can do this regardless of platform. And normally the infrastructure is in place on the platform to allow you to tag up your products, to push them in the right direction for those shipping options. So whether it's Magento and order attributes, or whether it's custom fields in BigCommerce, or whether it's product tags in Shopify, like, there's ways of facilitating that quite easily. The infrastructure's there. You just have to think it through and kind of plan it out, really.
And it may be that, your ERP does some of this functionality we're talking about. It may be that your ERP doesn't, and that's what's inhibiting you. But we can always bring it in front of the ERP, and we can always get it to work in tandem with the ERP. So even if you feel like you're limited with another piece of software, it's worth bringing to the table to discuss how you can do that. Are there any other kind of do's and don'ts if you're looking at maybe subscriptions or food and drink things for the first time as a retailer? Because a lot of food and drink retailers, they don't actually go into the D2C because they're so used to being B2B. But there's a movement at the moment of a lot of brands going D2C. So are there any lessons that you've learned being on the coalface there?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few, as you can imagine, but I think subscriptions aren't for everyone. I think you need to identify where subscriptions are valuable. I think I've seen plenty of brands offer subscriptions, and you kind of go, why would I subscribe to that? Like, that doesn't even make any real sense. So I think be thoughtful about which product ranges, if any, are right for subscription. But when you have found that and you've got a sweet spot and that there's value to your customers in subscribing, double down on it. Like, go for it properly. I don't think making subscriptions available is enough. We've seen this recently with a client where subscriptions were available. We launched, everything went great. That client, being as progressive and strategic as they are, we had a kind of phase 2. So we had, okay, now we need to focus on trying to highlight the benefits of those subscriptions on product pages. We need to look at things like upsell opportunities to make sure people know that, you know, when they've got a single item in their cart, do they know they can make a saving by subscribing? And then things like making the default selection subscription rather than one-off. You know, that's something that happened on Amazon a long time ago, to much people's frustration. But I think that made a huge difference for that client. I think we had like a 79% uplift in subscriptions at that point, just by iterating and just kind of bringing it to the fore a little bit more. So I suppose, yeah, tip number 1 would be, if it fits and you know subscriptions are valuable to your customers, go for it. Don't just make subscriptions available. Really focus on them. Really kind of double down and make them prominent on the site.
Thanks for that Amazon change. I've probably got a lifetime supply of toothpaste under my kitchen, under my bathroom sink. So yeah,
exactly.
When it first started subscriptions, you're like, oh, that seems logical. I'll just get that delivered. I have that, and then all of a sudden, you forgot about it.
40 of them. Yeah.
The other cheeky one the other day was I shan't name the food delivery box, but they had like a sneaky restart on their food box. So we went in to just have a look at how the menu might have changed. And we updated our address. That just automatically started the subscription again. And it had the choices that we'd made from like 2 years ago when we last had it. So like, much as I think is, you know, subscriptions, there's ways of getting new customers. Just updating your address details starts the subscription again. It's probably a touch on the over presumptuous side. Yeah, quite aggressive.
Yeah. I think
any other don'ts that you've seen?
I think, well, look, we all remember when subscriptions were like impossible to cancel. You know, that old kind of, you know, it's a one-click setup, and then when you need to cancel, you need to ring this phone number and go through 45 different options and do all of these different things. I think we're beyond that now. I don't think that's a thing anymore, thankfully. But I think, you know, one thing we have noticed is being really upfront with all of that information for customers at the point of purchase, so that they know what to expect. It's almost like a trust symbol. You know, you kind of need that sometimes when you're placing any sort of purchase. You need to know that if there's some sort of cooling off period or a money back guarantee, you want to know that stuff before you make the purchase. And we've seen this with clients, you know, adding things like subscription FAQs to the product page to kind of say, what happens if I want to pause my subscription? Can I do that? Can I change the products in there? Can I change the delivery date? Can I cancel? And making those things really prominent and obvious to put their mind at rest that actually, you know, you're not locked into this subscription. You've got to make a million phone calls to try and cancel if you want to change it or pause it because you're going on holiday. So get that stuff in front of the customers, you know, reassure them that there's plenty of kind of flexibility and editability once they start the subscription. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'm talking to a guy.
And communication more broadly, actually. Sorry. Another thing people, I think, can easily forget is once you've got them subscribed, perhaps you don't have the facility to, you know, add free things and delight and kind of tailor the subscription as it goes. But what you can do is communicate. Is you can send emails to remind them of the benefits they're getting from their subscription. You can remind them of perhaps new products, remind them that their payment date's coming up, remind them that delivery date's coming up, things like that, to reassure them that this is not a thing we've forgotten about that's just going to run forever. This is us telling you and communicating with you about the value of the subscription you're in. So yeah, I think communication more broadly at the front end, you know, before you kind of sign up, so people know what they're getting into and what the plans are, and then all the way through the process, you know, try and communicate as much as possible.
I'm talking to a guy who's got more of a service-based subscription at the minute, and the the way that we are thinking about playing it is almost the opposite. You know, when you get those pop-ups online that say, I don't want to save 25%, I'm quite happy paying full price, and you've got to click that message to close it. His idea is we should actually have, you've not logged in for so long, do you really want to be paying us X amount per month for your subscription? Here's the cancel button. And it's like, you could frame that in a similar way. Like, I don't want to continue to get healthy recipe cards every month, cancel me now. And then you think, no, actually I do want to continue to get those. So it might sort of, it's either going to keep you as a subscriber and probably a more committed subscriber, or it's just going to get rid of you. And actually maybe that's the best thing anyway, because they're going to turn into the customers that resent having the subscription or want to, you know, get refunds for things that get delivered or whatever that might be. So yeah,
we've talked about
reverse
this before.
psychology.
Yeah, we talked about this before, haven't we? In terms of like keeping your newsletter subscriber list clean by kind of being quite brutal about it and asking and being quite upfront with your subscribers. Maybe that's the same in this scenario. I quite like that. I prefer it to, that the other way around, where you're kind of saying, "Are you sure you don't want to save money?" Because I think we're all kind of aware of that now, aren't we?
Still gets me. So if you're moving towards creating a subscription for the first time, I guess you're quite big on data. I love looking at GA, looking at things. I know, I think this is one of yours, is the recency, frequency, and value, is it? So having a look at that data for existing products might help you start to see some patterns in what products, you know, are being recently frequently ordered, and you know, customers that are repeat purchasing. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, you'll know from your product catalog what products are more likely to fit a subscription model, but the data just will help you lean into that. So you'll know if products are being bought more frequently, and, you know, hopefully in the example you gave with the pet treats, hopefully you're on a mailing list. So as soon as that subscription's ready, they'll know that you're on that mailing list, and they'll be sending you saying this subscription is now available for treats only.
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. If you can look at, okay, these products here are not available on subscription, but they're being bought frequently, they're being bought, you know, quite or they've been bought quite recently by a cohort of customers, and those customers have a high lifetime value, that's a sweet spot. That's a product to get on subscription as soon as you can, and perhaps make it a default subscription. So yeah, you've always got to start at the data, or take your assumption or your hypothesis and then use the data to kind of explore that and see if it's true.
Prove it right or wrong.
Yeah.
I've got a friend, Craig, he's got two young lads, and when you're looking for subscriptions, you want to look at products that probably naturally lend themselves to subscriptions. Like, you know, for example, a face cream, you probably know, you go through, you know, if you're saying it's, you know, 1 mil or whatever, and your thing is 30 mil, you know, every month you're going to go for a face cream. So that's the likely subscription window for Craig. He's got two young lads, and he was going to Tesco's and buying the 250 mil drinks bottles for them to take to the sporting things that they go to. Like, the one lad plays football 3 times a week, one lad plays tennis 3 times a week. So he's going through 6 of these a week, you know, just taking a drink to their sporting event. And he thought, well, I'll have a look online and see if I can get it cheaper as a subscription. And lo and behold, he has. So now he just orders once a month, enough for the whole month on a subscription. It comes every day, and it's cheaper than buying it at the local Tesco. So you wouldn't naturally think the face cream, you kind of go, okay, that makes sense. Order it every month because you use it every day and it runs out every month. But like a product like the drinks the kids take to school, or the snacks the kids take to school, it probably doesn't scream subscription, but actually it's something that you use super cyclical.
Well, you can take that even further as well, can't you? Because food and drink as a kind of vertical makes you think, okay, subscription kind of fits because it's a fast moving consumer good. So you kind of go, okay, that works. But take it further. If you looked at things like air purifiers or air conditioners, there's parts of those products that need to be replaced, and they need to be replaced on a regular basis, like an air filter for an air purifier. But also it's quite easy to project when that will need to be replaced. So there's also, you know, with those kind of single purchases, like I buy the air purifier, there's also a chance there for, complementary or ancillary products that you can subscribe to make your life easier. It's not the sexy stuff as much as, buying kind of food and drink and event-based stuff. But actually, you need that air filter, and you get it every X amount of months or whatever it might be. So subscribing to that, so that you're never going to have a situation where your air purifier is not working because the filters need changing like that. So it's not always the most obvious thing with subscriptions. There's kind of other things you can look at, and even service-based stuff. I know we did it with, or we looked at email marketing campaigns around servicing of, in this case, it was fireplaces, but servicing, you can obviously, again, plan that in and kind of know when servicing is needed for certain products based on how often they're used. So one thing is, a virtual product for a servicing agreement that could be a subscription. So it doesn't always have to be the most obvious, the obvious thing. Just explore those kind of repeat purchases, and you can project and plan quite easily.
Well, it's understanding your product cycle and the needs of the product to be maintained, serviced, and all those things as well, isn't it? So that would play on a B2C and a B2B level.
Yeah, definitely.
I know some people that go and do jobs regularly at different houses, they will have the stuff delivered to that house on a subscription for them to be able to do the job. So they don't have to worry about getting it and taking it to the house. They just know every month when they turn up to do the job, the stuff that they need is there to be able to do it. So from a B2B perspective, if you're working with contractors like that, knowing your product cycle or knowing how your product's used is going to help make those subscriptions easier for people to dive into.
And then you've got a multi-shipping thing that you could do in a B2B customer account environment. Then it would be quite cool. So you could have different subscriptions going to different addresses based on the way that particular contractor works. I'm kind of geeking out a little bit now, but you could do loads there, couldn't you?
Yeah, just set up the different customers as delivery addresses and have different subscriptions run into each customer. So it just makes life super easy.
Yeah, and then you can have invoicing.
It beats the painter I had come round one time. He turned up on a motorbike, and I was like, "Where's all your stuff?" He's like, "Oh, I came over on the bus yesterday, and I left it down the side of the house." So he came over on the bus, bought all his stuff, and then came on a motorbike to do the painting. Interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, it seems quite long-winded.
Yeah. So the other thing you can do is, obviously, like we've spoken about, is pair those products, or look at how you pair those products with events or themes. So if it is going to be a movie night, if it is going to be something that you can kind of coin as your event in the week, the month, with the family, with, the sport or whatever it might be, like the Coca-Cola or the drinks, you can have those delivered to suit the needs of the family and how they're going to use that product. So think about it in terms of events or themes that bring that all together. Have you seen any other kind of ways of putting events and themes together, of how because the big ones that we're working with is in a drink scenario, is there's kind of like a cleanse or a detox, and they obviously have peaks at different times of the year. So maybe getting ready for summer, and then certainly after the Christmas period. Are there any others that you've seen like that?
No, I think those are really key ones, aren't they? There's key times in the year where people look at kind of resetting, look at their kind of health goals and fitness goals and things like that. But they are quite cyclical, though. It isn't just a January reset and a kind of springtime reset. I think you can do things around sporting events. Big sporting events tend to get people motivated to go out and do different things. So I think those can be, kind of framed as kind of thematic subscriptions. But yeah, ultimately it's based on that product portfolio and kind of who you're trying to reach.
But
thinking about themes and thinking about touch points through the year, I think is really important, rather than it back to my point a minute ago of just saying we now have subscriptions available on our website is not enough. It's got to be more thought out than that.
But when you go down to like a granular level, I started playing paddle tennis, and the balls don't last particularly long. So, after maybe, 4 or 5 games, they start to become a little bit less bouncy. And so having that on a subscription would make complete sense, because if you're playing X number of times a week, the balls are only going to last so many weeks before they need replacing. So you maybe sort of theming it around someone's usage or the amount they do that particular sport. You might be able to say, how many times a week do you play? Sort of ask the question rather than, how frequently do you want it, and let the actual product life cycle determine how often it's delivered.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Some brands won't want to point out that there's a shelf life to their products, but it doesn't have to be explicit, does it? You can ask questions from your customers around how often they play and all of those things, and then the rest of it can be done, through kind of email marketing and things like that to kind of get in front of them at the right time. So yeah, I think, again, knowing your product, knowing the life cycle, and knowing how it's used by your target market, I think is key, rather than and just saying, you can buy this on subscription. You need to think about exactly why they would do that.
Yeah, so if you're taking your first steps, we're saying have a look at the data, recency, frequency. It's going to give you some insights. It's also going to tell you the products that lend themselves quite well to subscriptions, because they're being purchased on a repeat basis. Look at products which naturally lend themselves to subscriptions, and maybe think a little bit outside the box. You might have products in your catalog that families use in a cyclical way, or businesses use in a cyclical way, and that might give you a different perspective. And then also look at the kind of product life cycle, whether that's how much you get out of the product, or whether the product needs, like you suggested, servicing and parts to be able to maintain it. And then think about pairing those with different events or themes. So if you've got a catalog at the moment, you're thinking of subscriptions, if you maybe go through that checklist, it should give you some products at the end of it that might become more suitable or make a case forward for moving to subscription model. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Awesome.
We'll put any apps or things that we've recommended in the links below, and our wonderful man Chris will do that for us. So thank you.
Brilliant.
Follow the Real eCommerce podcast and visit realagency.co.uk for more e-commerce content like this.